Welcome everyone. This is the November 9th edition of Enable Backup Office Hours with your head nerds. My name is Eric Harless. I'm the head backup nerd here at Enable, and I'll be taking you through this session here for the next 45 minutes to an hour. This is a session about you. Office hours are designed to give you guys a venue or a forum to be able to ask questions. Now, some of those questions are going to be great for open audiences where we've got multiple partners coming in and connecting. Others we may want to take offline. They may require some additional investigation or research, or it may require me helping you to provide a support escalation or additional research, or maybe a one-on-one working session. So please prepare questions, thoughts, comments. Don't hold back. Like I said, this is about you guys. I do have content today that I can talk through, even if I don't have a lot of questions come through. But I would prefer to spend it to address questions, concerns, and areas or topics of interest for the audience. I see we've got people that are still connecting or logging in, so we'll let them get connected while we do a little bit of the housekeeping and behind the scenes stuff, and then we will get started. So as I said, my name is Eric Harless. I am the head backup nerd here at Enable. I've been with the organization now a little bit over 8 years, but 25 years plus in the data protection space, working with backup, replication, high availability, business continuity type solutions, both software-based solutions, virtual appliances, physical appliances. I've worked in sales, support, system engineering, but predominantly the product management side of the organization around what do we build, how do we build it, and directing those development operations. My last 2 years, though, with Enable have been in this head nerd role, where I am a customer partner advocate focused on community training, education, and expanding the knowledge, building out that community of backup gurus that are familiar with our products. If you do want to follow me on social media, you can do that on Twitter at backup_nerd. Connect with me on LinkedIn at eric.harless@n-able.com, or drop me a quick email. You can find me on Reddit and a few other social platforms as well. Would love to interact with you guys out there directly in the community. So why office hours? Like I said, this is a monthly session that we do, and it's about helping you guys get the most out of the product, to help you guys get as close as possible to a 100% green in your dashboard, and help ensure that when it is time to recover data, you're going to have successful recoveries. So successful backups don't necessarily always equate to successful recoveries, but obviously if you don't have a good backup in place, you're not going to get the data back when you need it. So we start there with successful backups, and we're going to aim toward successful recovery testing and automation, and doing the various things needed to ensure that when the customer calls, you know that data is going to be recoverable and you get it back as quickly as possible. Ultimately, though, I want to turn you guys into a bunch of additional backup nerds and gurus out there that are in these forums, that are in these online locations, that are talking to your peers, either within your organization or even at other MSP and IT pro environments, so that it's not just me touting the features and functions and benefits of the software and how or why you should use it a certain way, but you're actually interacting with your peers that are doing it on a day-to-day basis. Once again, I do ultimately work for Enable, so I'm going to do my best to give you a straight understanding of what we can and can't do. Sometimes hearing it from your peers is a much more influential way to get that information. Okay. I want to start the session, and I do see some more questions that are coming in here, so I'll address those here in just a few moments. But I want to start by warming you guys up a little bit, and this may also generate some new questions or some inquiries around some of our recent or coming updates. So the current version of the backup client that you guys are going to find inside of standalone backup is going to be version 21.10. That's the October 2021 release. And 21.10 introduced several security enhancements and new platform support for Windows 11, and some UI enhancements here and there, stronger security around requiring an administrator login to be able to launch the backup manager, to be able to modify or edit the config.inis to run some of the client tool or the command line components, just enhance security across the board for the backup client itself. Obviously, it was still secure beforehand through things like GUI passwords and profiles, and being able to issue things from the backup.management console via remote commands, which was behind a 2FA locked environment and so on. But we are looking still to further enhance that security as we identify areas that we can. 21.11 is currently in development or in the final stages of QA. 21.11 should be made available, I believe, this coming weekend. So probably a Saturday or Sunday rollout if everything does go well from a finalized QA perspective. And that rollout will mean we'll update our cloud services. We'll post the 21.11 release to our download site, make it available for clients to be able to download those backup clients or update their agents to those new versions manually if they choose, or for new deployments. And then following about 2 to 3 weeks out after that, we will push out that 21.11 via auto update. So we don't immediately push it out to the masses. We make it generally available for new deployments or customers that have got specific bug fixes or enhancements they're looking for. And then once we get a organic growth on that version through new deployments or existing customer deployments, we will push out auto updates, either that version or if there are any additional patches or updates, we'll revise or update those and then push that out globally. We like to see a good 10,000 devices or so out there running the new version though before we push it out globally to ensure we've got a good statistical sample and make sure that things are working as expected. If you want to get notifications and communications on updates, you can follow our status blog, so status.n-able.com. If I bring up the status site here, and I'm just going to look for it really quickly. If I bring up the status site, you're going to get two options here. You can monitor service status, where you can see whether our products are up and running, whether the services are online or any maintenance that is scheduled. And then you can view release notes for a given product. And you'll notice here 21.10 auto update. This was pushed out or updated here on November 5th, talking about when we were going to push out 21.10 globally across standalone backup and essential integrated versions. RMM does follow suit as well, although at a slightly adjusted schedule. But if you want to drop your email address in here, you'll get notifications. And we should be posting that 21.11 information here probably within the next week or so, okay? So let's talk a little bit about what's going to be coming inside of 21.11. We are doing some UI or some UX changes here, and I won't dig into every little bell and whistle here, but we use a Nova design template. That's our internal design template structure. So we're making some updates around the Office 365, specifically the OneDrive Restore Wizard into that Nova platform. So you can see on the left the current UI look and feel, on the right the style guide for the new look and feel. You'll notice that it's got your view down here to see how many users I'm looking at a time. Check boxes to show the status was completed, so a little bit more visually appealing. You can see license status, you can see account information, file selected size, the structure, and the environment's pretty consistent. We talk about user versus owner now to make things a little bit clearer. We've moved some of our search bars and things over to the right-hand side to work or align with the way the rest of the UI works or looks. Before, instead of the green checkboxes on the right, we had the green color bars on the left-hand side here, meant to show you whether that was a successful backup or not for a given user. So once again, mainly a style guide change for this, but it is meant to bring consistency and get rid of some of the possible questions as you work through navigation and configuration of Office 365. Same thing here on the selecting items to restore page. So the calendar view here, my ability to search aligned to the right, the ability to expand and notice the folders here. You'll notice the expansion structure here is a little bit cleaner, and modification date and size, once again, a little bit cleaner look and feel across the board. And then I think the last screen here is just going to be the summary screen. This is where you're going to review and confirm before you make the item actionable. So we had a confirm, a finish, and previous before. Now we've got the ability to cancel, go back, and then actually trigger that restore. That's really what we're doing. So before, you weren't really clear on what that confirm is. So this should make things a little bit cleaner for you. A little bit more understanding of what's going on as you're working through that wizard, that process. But you'll see those kind of updates across the board as we're going back and retouching some of the solutions, things that were designed previously before we fully standardized on this Nova design. Let's see, there's some other minor UI changes here in the add wizards, things like that when you're adding mailboxes in, some acknowledgements, some things of that nature. So a little pop-up down here. I acknowledge that my Microsoft 365 data will be backed up and restored in accordance with the Enable Regional Data Principles, EMEA, APAC, North America, Latin America, and some more information links there. It's going to tell you basically where your data is being stored based on your containers and your regions that you have set up inside of the Management Console. Additional dialogues and color bars here, so as you're moving through and navigating, if you haven't selected a site or haven't selected a user, things of that nature, it will prompt you and it'll start to outline, what you need to select or where you need to make a configuration, selection, or change before you can proceed to that wizard, so you don't feel like you're stuck, searching for what button did I not tick or what item did I not check. Another enhancement that's introduced, this is going to be an enhancement that's going to be visible for our standalone backup version, and that's the ability to assign security officer roles to different users aside from super users. So as it stands today, you must be a super user in order to be able to get or accept security officer rights, the ability to request or generate an encryption key or a passphrase on demand. So we're making some enhancements here. We will allow those existing super user security officers to grant security officer roles to lower level users, so administrators, managers, and operators. That way, if their day-to-day operation does require them to grab an encryption key in order to redeploy, reconfigure, do a bare metal or a virtual disaster recovery, they can do that without having full super user rights. Now, an operator or a manager doesn't have user access capabilities. They can't create new users or things of that nature. So these lower level users won't be able to grant security officer rights to other people. It is still going to be controlled by the super user, but it gives you a bit of functionality there. It lets you have more granular control, least privilege access. So that way you don't have to artificially elevate a manager or an operator up to a super user in order for them to get that access to the to generate the encryption key. You do want to be careful with this, however. I wouldn't automatically turn this on for all managers and all operators. It does need to be somebody that has a legitimate need to generate that encryption key. So you would want to restrain that within inside of your organization somewhat. With that encryption key, you can do things like force clean, redeployments, reconfiguration. So there is, for as much benefit as you can do around recovery and restores, there is also damage that can be done. That encryption key is requested when you do things like forced cleaning or you're trying to purge historic history of data. So keep that in mind as you grant additional users those permissions. I'm curious if anybody has been looking forward to that or commented on a feature request in the past. I know of a few partners that are very eager to see this and been very vocal about it. So I'll be happy when they get to see this in the release and start taking advantage of it. Another, this is going to be more of a cosmetic change, somewhat tied to security. So as you know, if you've had to manually deploy a backup device, or if you've ever had to redeploy or set up a bare metal recovery or a virtual disaster recovery, it prompts you for 3 different credentials: a device name, a password, and either a security code or an encryption key or a passphrase that either you generated or was generated by the system. Those 3 factors, those 3 credential pieces are required to redeploy or configure that recovery. What we decided to do is rename that password to installation key. It is a system generated one. It isn't something that you have the ability to change or modify, and it is required for installation, but it's not so much a password that you would use to access the device or do other things. So we've renamed it in the GUI, in the console, from password to installation key. You'll see that updated throughout the documentation and inside of the other applications like the recovery console and virtual disaster recovery and bare metal recovery areas as well. But I wanted to point that out since we did decide to make that change here cosmetically. We introduced a new feature in 21.10, which allows you to email those daily views that you can set up to external recipients. And that's going to be any user's email address you'd like to send it to without granting them any type of login access to the backup.management UI, the standalone backup portal UI. And that was the initial release. With 21.11, we're going to make some additional enhancements to this. We're going to adjust some of the UI work around the email layouts, where the placement of the add recipients button is. We're going to do some additional cleanup here to make sure that they're valid email addresses and things of that nature. If there's no scheduled emails created, then we've made some modifications to that. Hey, there's no scheduled reports, no scheduled views set up now, and we've renamed the backup user field to internal recipients. So you'll see internal recipients and external recipients instead of backup users and external recipients, to make it a little bit clearer for you guys. I don't have a current screenshot or a UI for you on this one just yet. I can show you the way it looks in the current version, but I don't have the updated version here to show you guys just yet. That one will be made available obviously in the release notes once we do publish 21.11, but just so you know that there will be a few additional updates there, expanded tooltips as well with information around how to proceed and set up and manage these views. Another security enhancement that we're looking at for the 21.11 release is in place when you delete devices. So if you were to come in and go through a customer and make a couple selections to issue a remote command, and you send out an update or a set archive schedule or adjust selections or throttling remote command, and then you move to you type in a new end customer and you filter on their devices and you select a couple devices there and you send another remote command to those devices. If you aren't careful as you're moving around inside of the UI and navigating and making selections, sometimes you need to go in and clear those selections. So if you were to move over to another customer and found an abandoned device, it's been sitting around for 6 months, and you know this machine is no longer needed, it's no longer billable, you need to remove it from the backup console. Well, if you select that device and then you hit delete, you really need to make sure that you didn't have other devices from other screens and other pages selected. They're visible and listed on the bottom of the screen, but sometimes you click a little bit faster than you expect and you accidentally deleted a device. So if you were to go in and do that today, we're going to give you this little pop-up on the left that says, hey, you're getting ready to delete this device or devices. This can't be undone, and once you've deleted it, we're going to purge the history and restore is no longer be possible to you inside of the UI. And you hit the delete button. It's going to proceed to delete that 1 or 5 or 10 or 50 devices, whatever you had selected. And at most, I think you could have, probably 200 devices selected before you wouldn't be able to view, your UI on the screen. What we've done with 21.11 is we've introduced a confirmation factor in here. So if you've got 5 devices selected and you hit the delete button now, it's going to say, hey, we see that you want to delete 5 devices, please enter the number 5 to confirm that you wish to delete these 5 devices. It's meant as a form of a speed bump to ensure that you take a quick look at those devices and you enter in a confirmation that says, yes, I do know I want to delete these 5, or you cancel, deselect the ones that you don't want to delete, and then start that process yet again. While this is not entering something like an encryption key or other validation, to get into this stage of the console, you had to come in with your credentials, you had to go through your 2-factor authentication, and from a deletion perspective, if you do delete devices inside of the management console, those devices, while we say that they are no longer accessible and the history is going to be deleted, and that is a correct statement, our support techs do typically have the ability to roll back those deletions from a snapshot, and those snapshots do exist on the system for typically up to 14 days. So if you do accidentally delete devices, before or after this implementation, or you come in and you can't find a device and you're not sure, well, did somebody delete this? What happened to it? Reach out to our support techs, and they can work with you to see if there was a accidental or malicious deletion of devices. And if it's been within the last, 10 to 14 days, they should be able to roll that back for you if it still exists within a snapshot. Okay. We've introduced some functionality for managing and monitoring virtual machines differently than physical servers. It's tied into some of our licensing models and our pricing structures as well. So what we've done here with the 21.11 release is we've introduced DigitalOcean as a virtual machine manufacturer. So for any of you guys that are hosting machines out inside of DigitalOcean, we'll be able to see those now. We'll automatically identify those as virtual machines. And if you've got a licensing or pricing model that ties differently to virtual environments, it'll correctly identify that as a virtual machine now and apply the virtual price point as opposed to a physical server or a workstation price point. Okay. Another enhancement here tied around email. So this could impact email views or logins or various other areas. Historically, we've used a 50-character email limitation for the backup.management console. We did make some changes with 21.11 to conform to the RFC 3696 standard, which means you can have an email address that is up to 254 characters in length. So obviously this isn't going to impact any additional users, but as you add new users, if you do have an urge to create something that is a very, very long email address, you will be able to do that. And this is to ensure that we conform with other single sign-on applications, or if we expand out functionality for future AD integration or things of that nature, that we are fully in compliance. Hashtag forward-looking statements. I think finally, this is my last slide on the upcoming update. macOS Monterey support is now available. If you look at your current 21.10 releases, that 21.10 client should run and identify Monterey, but it may be showing up as a version 11.16, version 10.16 to 10.17, something like that, or even still showing up as a Mac OS X and a version number. So we've made some updates here so that the Mac OS version 12 is listed and properly supported as part of the OS, as part of the backup agent, and that you can do things such as enabling full disk access and configuration, and we can get proper backups in a Monterey environment. Now, if you are using the newer M1 hardware, M1 chip, we do still require that you utilize the Rosetta or Rosetta 2 emulation capability, because we are still compiling that for an Intel-based processor. It is something we are looking forward to doing, creating a M1 or an ARM native, an Apple Silicon native build as part of a future update. Once again, hashtag forward-looking statements. Probably not something that we're going to see before the end of this year, but hopefully something we'll see in Q1, Q2 of 2022. Okay, so let's see what we've got question-wise here. There's a couple that have come through, and let's see if there's anything that I need to address here that I can do with the audience versus things that are individual. Devin had a question here. A client that's renamed their computer, and now the computer name and the backup name don't match. What's the best way to fix that? So Devin, there's not a way to rename the backup device name inside of the console, but what we can do is we can turn on a couple additional columns inside of the integrated version of Incentral and inside of the standalone backup console. So if I flip back out to my UI here really quick, let's see, someplace here, there we go. If I come back out to my dashboard, you can see that I've got a handful of devices here, and you can see I've got my current device name. This is what was deployed either through auto deployment or manual deployment, and once this is created, I can't change or modify this device name. But what you can do is come in and add an additional column, and we'll just do a quick search on name, and instead of displaying the device name, or in addition to displaying the device name, come in and add a computer name, or you can scroll all the way down to custom columns. And inside of custom columns, you'll find some things like notes or information or temp or some other columns down here. Plus, you can create your own columns through the Add Column button. And once you've added these extra columns, now you're going to have some options. So we'll scroll all the way to the right here, and I need to find that computer name. So I'll grab this. This is the NetBIOS name. I'm going to drag it over here all the way to the left, and I'll drag it to the left of device name. So now you can see I've got my NetBIOS name right next to the backup computer name that's assigned, and you can see if there was any type of change here or what have you. In addition, now that I've dragged it to the left of device name, because device name is the index, if I scroll to the right, device name is going to stay there, but the computer name is going to be to the left of that. So that's one way to look at this. If you scroll to the right here, then once again, device is still going to be the index, and this is going to hide as you're moving things around. The other approach is to just do a free-form entry. So the notes field, for instance, here, or info or description, these all have little pencils on them. So you can come into here and under my notes field say that this is now Bob's computer. And save that, and you'll have that free-form text entry in here that's available. And you can export this information out, pull it out via API as well if you need. A perfect example here would be, it was Bob's Win 7 and now it's Robert's Win 11, and you've done some major updates or changed the hardware out and you just want to reattach the old backup client. I know it can get a little bit confusing. We've talked about some possibilities to replace this through aliases and other variations, but it is a key in the redeployment right now, one of those 3 credentials I talked about. So not currently a way to change it or replace it. Excellent question. I appreciate that. The session is recorded. It's available typically within a few days in our MSP Institute. So if we come out to our website here, so I'm going to go to our Success Center. So success.n-able.com, and inside of the MSP Institute here, you'll be able to find a previous office hour sessions, as well as links to all of the various nerd boot camps and other nerd office hour sessions. In addition, while you're in here, upcoming nerd events, enable events, even resources here. So if you come into resources, come down to the head nerds here, you'll be able to see any of our upcoming boot camps or office hour sessions if you want to look or schedule for the live events. So down here at the very bottom, upcoming head nerd events, and let's see what we've got going on. We've got my office hours, obviously. They're doing N-Central General Automation boot camps today and tomorrow. Optimizing EDR boot camps, those are happening as well for N-Central and RMM. Great question, guys, appreciate that. So Alan's got a question here. I've got a question regarding how to properly back up virtual machines on clustered Hyper-V hosts. Ooh, okay, that's going to be a good one. The support documentation states to select the VMs individually on one host only, but how does that work when the VM can live migrate to another host? The VM is only selectable for backup when it's active on the host with backup installed. So Alan, if you're using a Hyper-V cluster shared volume type environment, then yeah, you're only going to be able to see the VMs that are on or owned by the active node. So you'd put the backup manager on each node in the cluster, and what you can do is you can choose to back up all virtual machines on each and every node. If you do this, as VMs fail over from node to node, they would get selected and backed up. However, that does mean that if your machines are live migrating or actively migrating from node to node frequently, that you could end up doing a full backup on one node and then another full backup on another node. They don't share the same encryption key. They don't share the same dedupe repository. So while we are cluster compatible, I wouldn't call us cluster aware. The backup agent's only going to see the owned VMs that are currently owned by that node. My recommendation would be to utilize Hyper-V to assign a primary node for those virtual machines. And that way, if all things are up and running, that those VMs are going to stay identified and isolated and owned by the right systems. If you do have virtual machines that fail over, then they would get protected, but they'll end up getting migrated or moved back once that cluster node comes back online or is rebooted and so on. From a restore perspective, if you need to restore those virtual machines, you're going to find that you can restore back to local disk. You can restore back to network share locations, things of that nature, but you won't be able to restore back to that clustered volume directly. So any type of restore that you perform would be a two-phase process. So you'd be restoring the machine back as a local VM or a network attached VM, and then you need to move it into that cluster volume or migrate it back into the cluster so they can move back and forth at will. Okay, which brings me to that topic in GoToWebinar. One of the links in that handout session is going to be Calendly link, so that you can see my calendar out about 6 weeks. The Calendly link allows you to book a one-on-one nerd session. It's 45-minute default session, and we could use that to cover things like boot camp leftovers or office hour detailed or deep dives. You want to talk scripting, you want to talk automation, you want to talk about a customer satisfaction issue or a support case that you're having some issues with that you're looking for additional insight, or maybe something I need to help you potentially escalate or get redirected to a better audience or a different audience. Maybe we're talking about doing a migration, moving between RMM and N-Central to the standalone version of backup, or vice versa. Best practices, competitive analysis, things of that nature. So no real topics that are off limits. If it's something I can't help you with, I will let you know. And if you can give me some idea of what you want to talk about, case information or general topics, when you do book those sessions, it would definitely help me be prepared coming into the meeting versus, treating the first half, as a discovery call. But, I am here as available as a resource for you. While I'm not tech support, I might have some additional insight or look at things slightly different than the way our support technicians do. So happy to talk with you guys on any of these topics if you are interested in scheduling those sessions. The reason I went this route, it allows you to see my calendar and book the time. You won't be able to book same day. I think it requires a 24-hour notice, and it does allow me to ensure that I've got a bit of buffer between individual sessions. And it's just so much easier than chasing back and forth with email. Does this time work? Does that time work? So please feel free to use this. Hold on to it. If you don't use it now or in the next month, you may use it in the next quarter or within the coming year. Okay. That handout, let me bring it up really quickly just for the audience as a whole. So any of the other links that I've mentioned today, like the Success Center, the status pages, blogs, updates, those kind of things, those are all linked here. So you've got my calendar link down at the bottom, one-on-one nerd backup call. In addition here, you've got some feature and schedule validations here we can do with product management even. So if you're interested in scheduling some time with product management to talk through features, topics, things of that nature, they've made those links available to me as well. So lots of good resources here. If you don't do anything else or take anything else away from this call today, at least grab this link. While you might not need it now, if you find you need it in the future, it's great to have, okay? I want to take you guys through just some of the high-level scripting and some of the projects that I'm working on, and this may introduce some additional questions or thoughts on your part. So let's see where that slide is. So some of the current projects that I'm working on, I am actively building out Datto RMM and Kaseya VSA installation scripts and documentation. It's a rather tedious environment considering I'm not an active RMM or Kaseya user, so I've been working actively with partners. There were some other partners on here that are using other RMM tools. I'd be more than happy to convert some of these same scripts and documentations and work with you to put together a script, a document, a blog post. We could do this as a joint article or post if you'd like to have your company name mentioned and referenced in the script and in the blog post. More than happy to create a little bit additional press for you guys as well if you'd like to do that, or we can work anonymously if you like and generate these scripts, make them available for you. If you just then want to post them into the various communities out there for these other players, you can do that by all means. The ultimate goal here, though, is to ensure that the deployment of the software and the management and monitoring of it is as easy regardless of whose RMM platform you use, okay? I'm actively working on a Microsoft 365 monitor and check for N-central. This is something that would basically let you monitor the Office 365 environment for failures, errors, exceptions, misconfigurations, storage location, things of that nature from inside of N-central, possibly running on the probe or on a dedicated device inside of your environment. It's one of the limited areas today. Reporting is very limited for M365 backup inside of N-central integration, and the functionality fully exists on the outside in standalone backup. So I'm working on taking those checks and those inquiries and putting them into something inside of N-central. First, it would be a check or a monitor you would add to your existing N-central environment, but once I've got enough customers that have provided feedback on it and implemented it, we can work on having that brought to product management's attention and potentially integrated into the product directly. I've been doing some active work on our recovery console application. Now, our development team is building out the next iteration of our continuity efforts. That would be a replacement for the on-premise recovery console. The current iteration they're working on is replacing the recovery console with a target to Hyper-V, either offline or flat VHD, VHDX files, or directly to the Hyper-V host. And then that's going to be followed up either with an Azure target or the VMware target. I know they're doing these in phases. I don't know if they've picked which the next target will be, but first definitely going to Hyper-V. We'll probably have a call for beta users and early adopters here at some point in the near future. I'll start to recruit that during my boot camps and the upcoming office hour sessions too. As well, if you do sign up for that partner advisor group that I mentioned a little bit earlier, that's an audience I will go to once I've got a beta or a preview available that we can open up so you guys can get access to that recovery console replacement. But even outside of that, I've been working on scripting and automation to allow the recovery console to run as a service, or either scripting and automation or third-party tools. And I've built out some PowerShell monitoring as well. That's in an early prototype stage for additional monitoring and reporting and alerting on what's going on inside of the recovery console without having to go to that physical machine and bring up the UI. Any of that you guys are interested in, feel free to reach out to me. I'd be more than happy to get you involved in some of the prototype scripting that I'm working on, get your feedback and collect it, get you visibility before I actually post this out to my GitHub page or make it available by other scripts and automation components. For those of you that aren't familiar with some of the scripting and the automation that I've done, there is a link to my GitHub page in the handout, and a handful of other tasks that I'm looking at or thinking about, probably starting in the Q1 timeframe. Additional integrations, the ability to do maybe some bare metal or virtual disaster recovery for Linux environments using an open source bootloader applications available. Also looking at maybe some additional bare metal recovery enhancements through scripting and automation, through inclusion of PowerShell into the WinPE boot image, through some additional automation or scripting around Windows partition management, and then possibly even a partition undelete utility that we can embed into that bare metal recovery tool or into this PowerShell included version of a BMR stick. I'll likely start out by doing this as a sideload opportunity. So you build your BMR media, sideload some additional tools or a helper into that. And once I've collected feedback on that one, it's something I would hand over to product management to see about potential inclusion into a future update. So the goal with this audience or any of my scripting and automation is ultimately to solve some low-hanging fruit for partners with some quick wins in some scripting. But I do want to ultimately make it into product and take these proof of concepts and enhancements that have been through some validation with partners and get them actually embedded into the product if possible. So Greg was saying here that he's using Backup Radar to get a single pane of glass on the different backup products that the customers are using. Is there any way to get something like the MSP dashboard that could show multiple backup products? So you're asking if there would be any way inside of MSP Backup to show feedback for other backup products. Not currently. It's an interesting inquiry, Greg. If you're using our RMM tools, RMM has checks and monitors for other backup applications. So it can go in and do its own check and read some various information and things of that nature. So I don't know that it's the standalone backup application that would be the ideal target for that one, but maybe it's in Central or RMM where you have a device in there and we have a script or a check that's going to monitor additional information. I don't know, is your ultimate goal here to replace Backup Radar and have it all inside of the enabled platform, or is it to just try to get to more of a single pane of glass? Okay. You know what? I can bring that information over to the guys in product management, see if it's something they've thought about. If you want to drop me a quick note or schedule some time with me, I'd love to talk with you some more about it. Maybe find out what products you're talking about specifically. Obviously, if you've got 10 different backup products that you're monitoring, probably going to be different priorities on being able to have checks or monitors available for them. But being that RMM and Essential are both scriptable platforms, I don't see why we couldn't do very similar monitoring or scrubbing just like Backup Radar does. They are an active partner of ours, though. I don't want to obviously usurp or make them obsolete, but they do provide some visibility and some things that we don't actually do really good jobs at reporting of either. That Office 365 item I mentioned, inside of Essential, you probably get better alerting and notification in Backup Radar right now than you do inside of Essential. One of the things I'm trying to correct. Great query, great inquiry there. I appreciate that. Some additional things that are going on. Let's see, scripts, projects. So I'm all about building out scripts. There's some sample scripts available on my GitHub page. As with any script from an external unknown source, please review it. Make sure you understand what it does before you play with it in a production environment. I don't allow anyone else to post or upload into my GitHub page, so they are all coming from me. But once again, you may have just met me here today. So yeah, please do review those and reach out and ask questions if you have any on any of the sample scripts. So I'm going to list here just some of the scripts I've built prior, or some scripts I've built some recent updates to. So I've built updates recently to our maximum value report. So it's got GUI selection for the month or the period that you want to generate your usage report for. This maximum value report, it's automation of a report that already exists in the backup.management console, but it goes through and generates a CSV and an Excel file for you. It merges some fields, it subtotals and removes your devices that are in trial, tells you how many servers, workstations, virtual machines, Office 365s, and disaster recovery testing components are configured and calculated for high water during a given month, and then generates a pivot table for you. So that way you've got, I don't want to say a billing report, but you've got a usage report that can definitely help you in determining and performing billing operations for your customers. I want to take that report and actually adjust that a bit to embed with API calls from, say, ConnectWise or Autotask to be able to dump that usage into their billing platforms, so that you can take that usage and actually monetize that for your actual bills. So actively looking for partners that would be interested in working with me on that. I can pull the data out of our product very, very easily, but when it comes to the API calls and the understanding of how you might build a product inside of a PSA tool for billing purposes, I do require really your expertise to know, is this the right structure? Does this make sense? How would you go about this? How would you build for it? And then try to build something out that would fit for not just you as a customer, but for multiple customers. Other updates, I already had a report that exports your Microsoft 365 statistics and users. I've recently updated that now to be more concise, more detailed within those reports. And it actually has an import option now too. So you can export a list of your current Office 365 or Microsoft 365 email and OneDrive users directly from the backup.management UI. It'll show you which ones are selected for backup, which ones are newly added, or shared mailboxes, unlicensed mailboxes, things of that nature. And then you can actually make edits to the CSV file and upload that CSV file back in, and it will change or update your selections for who you want to back up. So I built this around a couple partners that had 1,000+ users, and they didn't want to go through and individually select each of the users in a GUI. So we do the export, edit the export for selections, and then re-ingest the export as an import to adjust or modify selections. So feel free to take a look at that if you like. Some new scripts, some new Linux and Mac install, upgrade, and uninstall scripts available. I've got some advanced scripts with a lot of error checking, as well as some single line script options, shell script options for just that down and dirty quick Linux or Mac install or uninstall from SSH or take control terminal, those kind of things. And then I did do a new script also that allows you to bulk generate customer UIDs. If you're going to do automated deployment, we prompt you in a lot of cases for this 36-character string that's tied or mapped to your individual customer containers. So I built a single report that will generate a CSV or an Excel file for you with a list of all your customer UIDs broken out by end customer, scripting to convert manually deployed devices into passphrase commands, individual file names for the executables, .run and .pkg files, depending whether it's Mac, Windows, or Linux machines, things of that nature. So some good informational scripts if you are looking to bulk load or mass create customers and containers inside of the backup.management UI. Some other scripts that are out there, you notice there's one that's crossed through here, this create notification user for email views. This allowed us to build a user you can send a view to, and that's really obsoleted now with this latest 21.10 and 21.11 releases, the ability to send views to end customers now without giving them access to the console. So it's great to see work that I've done or problems I've solved actually get embedded into product. So this one I'll probably end up pulling off my GitHub page at some point in the near future, but as of right now, it's very minimal use now that we've built the functionality into the UI itself. Other scripting components here that I've built, some ideas, things that I'm thinking about. I'm just really looking for partners to say, hey, yeah, I do need that. Well, it's great to go off and build scripts if I don't have an active partner looking to use it that can help validate the end result. They kind of get pushed to the end of the list. So if there are scripting automation needs that you guys have, don't hesitate to reach out. It's a case of just booking some time with me, letting me know your need. I may already have some of the modules and pieces. It may be something I can help you get started on, or one of your technicians, by providing you components or additional functions that are already built, a sample scripts that do 80 or 90% of what you already want to do, things of that nature, enough to start and create and build your own. Or maybe it is something that, yeah, I could turn around and turnkey deliver. While I'm not a PSA, while I'm not a professional services organization, and I don't do scripts on demand or scripts for hire, it could be something if it serves enough customer need that I do build out at least a rough proof of concept of it for other partners to use. Or maybe it's a case of something I bring up in an upcoming API bootcamp as a topic. So I built it for that to be able to show off and expand our partner knowledge. So there are no bad asks here. If there's something that could save you some time or headache, please don't hesitate to reach out. Okay. Let's see. So this last question here before we wrap, we've got a customer looking for an overnight gold master distribution of multiple branches. Ooh, okay, i.e. one backup to many restores. Is that possible with enable backup? Probably not. The way the software works, it's going to build a dedupe pool. It's going to be able to restore that environment back. And while you could restore back to multiple systems, they're going to look like clones of the same system. They're not going to have any type of sysprep or anything of that nature on them. They're going to be all the same machine name and potentially the same static IP or what have you. And unless you're constantly, updating that master distribution and doing new backups and creating new images, they're going to get obsoleted very, very quickly with the way Windows does its updates now. Yeah, probably not the best tool for it. You could probably figure something out, but since it does dedupe and does all those compressions and things of that nature, it's not going to be ideal. I think you're just going to introduce additional wait states and slow down your restore process. You would ideally want something that actually does create an actual image backup, something that works at a block level and is creating an image that way and going to lay down the image. It's going to be optimized for rapid redistribution or redeployment. I'd be happy to talk to you some more about that one though if you'd like to book some time, and we can see if it's if there's other ways around this. Okay. So guys, with that, I want to thank everybody though once again for their time and attention. Guys, have a great rest of your week, and I will catch you next time.